Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome along to Beyond Bitcoin, a program that talks about most anything but Bitcoin. But of course, Bitcoin is a major part of the ecosystem, so we always discuss it by comparison somewhere along the way. My name is Deryck. I'm the CEO of Portal Asset Management. Of course, here with me today is my friend and colleague, Nitin Gaur. Hello, Nitin.
Hey, Deryck. My name is Nitin. I serve as Director of Financial Sciences and Digital Asset at IBM. I'm also leading the research and CTO for Portal Asset Management. So looking forward for another week of excitement in this space, Deryck.
There's been no lack of excitement this week. and part of that just base excitement is just the level of increase of value that we've seen across the crypto assets this week. And I thought it might be time for us to put some of that into context. Now, of course, standard advice and disclaimer, we're not providing investment advice here. It's just Nitin and I having a conversation, and I hope you enjoy it and find something interesting from it. And why I say that is because the market capitalization of the entire crypto industry this week has risen to $2.74 trillion. So where does that sit in context with the rest of the economies in the world? And that's what I thought I would just provide a bit of a statistical download for everyone to get an idea from a helicopter view exactly where that sits. So at the moment, there are about 12,000 plus tokens that exist out there. Bitcoin represents about 40 to 43% of the market capitalization. What's interesting about that is that it's down from 73% of the total market capitalization as of January 1 this year. And that's not because it's reduced its value. Of course it hasn't. It's gone up considerably, as everyone knows. It's because it's reduced, one would argue, maybe its relevance, but certainly its overall capitalization because of the other tokens becoming major parts of the capitalized story. The CCI 30 index over the last 12 months has risen 509%. The venture capital industry has invested $18 billion in the last 3 quarters of this year. The estimated number of crypto investors around the world now exceeds 220 million crypto investors around the world. It's considered that the rate of adoption to this space from January to June has doubled. It's gone up 100%, the rate of adoption in the last 6 months. The largest traders on Coinbase are now institutions. And there's substantial signs of disruption and disintermediation of traditional finance, topics we could cover many times over. But then where does this sit in the, heaven forbid, are you ready for this term, the real world? And you can either call it the real world or the legacy industries, but where does it sit in what we normally determine as metrics? So the global listed companies capitalization, so all the companies in the world listed on all the stock exchanges in the world, currently sits at $97 trillion. Gold total capitalization globally sits at $11.315 trillion as of November this year. Real estate under management, so that's real estate that isn't your home, but real estate that's under management that's operated purely as an investment, sits at $9.6 trillion, but as of 2019, so it would have gone up in value, but that's the latest statistics I've got. The top 10 oil and gas companies in the world sit at $3.3 trillion. The FANG stocks sit at $7.1 trillion. So just to remind you, the total digital asset environment was at $2.74 trillion. So that represents now 2.8% of global equity value. It represents 24.2% of gold's capitalization. And that's a pretty damn good run because when you think of it, gold sort of had that marketplace for the last, 10,000 years? And really Bitcoin's come from nothing to having 24.2% relevance or capitalization value against gold in 12 years. So then we see it's at 2.86% of the real estate under management. it's about 38% of the total value of the FANG stocks. And if you add all of those together, Nitin, it's at 2.1%, 2.14% of all of the above asset classes. And so if, by example, you were to use the modern portfolio theory, I always like that because the modern portfolio theory was developed in 1954, but nonetheless, the modern portfolio theory that suggests, diversification and where possible, reduced correlation at 2.4%, it should be sitting in a portfolio now, in a traditional portfolio, because it represents a total part of a modern portfolio theory. So, I'll stop there, but I just wanted to add some context. Where do you think that puts people now in starting to understand this industry is not fly by night. It's not gimmicky. It's not just an interesting group of boffins. It's serious capitalization.
It is. And I think, Deryck, those stats numbers are just phenomenal and remarkable, which explains sort of the interest from institutional investors coming into the space, because it's one, growing exponentially. And second thing is, if you stack them up against nation states, exactly similar to what we have been doing with some of the athletes like Michael Phelps and folks who've gotten some enormous success in a specific area, we begin to compare them to, to nation states who as a country would have made, so much, gold medals and an overall Olympic medal tally. We begin to compare wealthy individuals like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and other, Elon Musk of the world, to their net worth and how it stacks up against GDP of countries. So why not with crypto? And even in crypto, looking into various asset classes like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are still a lion's share of the overall market cap. I think to me, this represents a phenomenon, right? And this is something which we have been talking both in terms of, as we construct our portfolios, is what does that diversification look like? Because even in the crypto industry, there are sectors emerging. There's NFTs, there's Metaverse, there's DeFi, there is Layer 1, there's Web 3.0, which sort of provides that foundational support. And I begin to compare this with these projects, and this is my perspective as I have developed over time, Deryck, is if you look at the world population of 8 billion people, let's say it was a harmonized world, we had 8 billion people. These, and I'm going to use the word metaverse, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that in this context, because metaverse is not just all about gaming in this case. But if you look at the metaverse of these blockchain projects, the Ethereum, the Solana, the Bitcoin, Algorand of the world, they then become a digital nation state-like infrastructure that's attracting, first of all, talents. It's attracting, by its protocol and technical advancements, the ease of doing business, which is through either walleting structures, which is what Ethereum has done with MetaMask and MetaMask Institutional, for example, and what Solana has done with Phantom, is making it easier for people to come on board, creating a richer developer ecosystem, exactly what countries would do to attract entrepreneurs and attract talent to develop the ecosystem. And the rule of law, which is another part of doing business, is codified into the incentive economic structures. You begin to see these metaverse sort of, universe created by these blockchain layer 1 projects, especially, are competing for talents, competing for projects and incentive structures to do just that. And I think it's fantastic, because if you look at as the numbers that you so eloquently put, that you begin to see this ecosystem being as compared to as developed, as innovative companies like Apple and Tesla in market cap. And in true sense, they have a much higher and exponential potential than a singular technology like what Apple had brought from iPhone perspective and what Tesla is doing with space. And so I think, to me, it's technology. And as technology always is deflationary, which means it becomes cheaper and cheaper to use, the focus then begins to go at the higher stack, which is what is the true innovation? What is the true element of recruiting the global community? And this becomes sort of a metaverse of communities around the world, depending on the interest, depending on the economic values, depending upon the value system that these projects sort of, amalgamate. So I'll pause at that. I do want to spend some time on essentially how this metaverse is evolving and what is the impact of that on some of the valuation. And I do have some numbers as well in terms of where we are on layer 1 as we categorize this rich ecosystem that's developing. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And we've started with the big picture view. We've started with helicopter view of just where we sit amongst all of these other classes, economies, structures, communities that we talk about. At the end of the day, Nitin, you and I are at the end of about 200,000 generations of humans. And about 100,000 generations of those humans existed on the savannah. So about half of our entire existence existed on the savannah. To survive on the savannah, we all lived in tribes. And those tribes worked very closely together as communities. Sure. And they had ring fences around them. They protected themselves from marauding tribes. They protected themselves from unpleasant animals that might eat them. That was the existence for 100,000 generations. I'd love to say we're enormously more sophisticated, but in many ways, I think that still exists. I think we still operate as tribes. I still think we work as communities. And now they're starting to become these metaverse communities that you refer to them as. And now they're even when we develop technology, like the Ethereum platform, what happens first? A community is formed. Sure. What does that community do? Starts building an economy. And what does that economy do? Start looking not dissimilar to a country and how that country works and how that economy works. And that's what is kind of so fascinating that you and I have talked about a bit here. These names, Terra Luna, Avalanche, Polkadot, Solana, Ethereum, Cardano, they're all layer one platforms. Let's not look at them in a dispassionate form. Let's maybe look at them for a moment as their own sovereign states and with their own members with passports and communities. And with that maybe is what's happening. And it's happening because that's what mankind does. If we were rabbits, we might program it differently. You know what I mean? But that's what mankind does, and that I think is what we're creating here. What do you think? Is that sort of
no, absolutely. That reminds me, Deryck, that we should probably invite, you all know Hariri, the author of ¡Sapient, and Jared Diamond, the author of Guns, Germs, and Steel, great. Who has talked about the evolution of us as humans. And at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. These communities represent a digital tribe, and there is a lot of tribalism, as we have seen, that the core Bitcoin community is really abhorrent of the Ethereum community, and they always Bitcoin go at each other. That's right. And so, but what we fail to see in that whole context, that there's a lot of innovation happening in both those camps. So there's tribalism, there's digital tribalism, but I want to bring the entire context of how these tribes originated and how there was eventually movement of people and assets and exchange between these tribes that led to commerce, that led to modern day trade finance and other elements between countries and exploiting the natural resources that each country can exploit. But at the same time, the talent countries like Israel and China and United States have embarked upon in exploiting their human resources, right? So the notion of metaverse becomes such more prominent in this context. And I'll actually just define for the audiences that oftentimes metaverse is used in context of gaming. But in true sense of metaverse is it's a network of always on a sort of a dichotomy between the virtual and real environments in which people can interact with one another and digital objects while operating in a virtual representation. And what that essentially means is what we are seeing. I mean, our blockchain and digitalized and layer one protocols have brought this to life. And as you alluded to earlier, Deryck, I have Bitcoin ecosystem, I have Ethereum ecosystem, and I have other layer one protocols who are the foundation of these initial digital tribes that are creating tools and that are attracting more and more communities, other digital natives to join them, regardless of their geographical location and boundaries. Yes. And as these digital natives join that ecosystem, they are bringing their talent, they are bringing their, a natural resource, whether we call it a data as a natural resource or just ideas that are coming to this ecosystem around it. But then you also begin to see trading of these tokens that represent a value system of a layer one protocol. The demand and supply based on the talent ecosystem communities that are building these things. But with advent of NFTs, which takes the human talent to the next level, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's your identity in form of non-fungible tokens, we begin to see metaverse come to life, that you could be a native resident, a dual citizen, if I may use that term, of Ethereum ecosystem and Bitcoin ecosystem. And you may have both of those tokens and you can interchangeably use them to buy NFTs and interact digitally with other digital natives. It is similar to you having 2 passports, Deryck, which I think you did and I do. And we can travel visa-free to those countries, which means that we have access to the financial system, and we can use that financial system to reduce our cost of transaction by using the local money, which is what I do with Ethereum, Bitcoin. But even if you're a Bitcoin native, you have interoperability projects which are providing the passporting avenues for you to be able to move from one network to another network, as with the vehicles such as wallets and tokens, and be able to exchange. So the value exchange system that we're creating is much larger than simply measuring them with market caps. I think it's defining a whole new element of the evolution of humankind and convergence of technology and cultures. So I think it has a lot more value system attached to it than how we measure it today, and purely in terms of dollar and cents. I'll pause at that. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. It's a deeper concept, I think, but it has a long-lasting impact on not now, but 10 years from now, as to how next generation begins to deal with each other and begin to respect values and traits. Because I'll say one more thing, Deryck, which I learned on an interesting podcast, was that Bitcoin is the only global system where there's no dispute on ownership. There's no dispute who owns what. There is no fights because protocol has defined that, right? And so there's no other social system. So in social experiment terms, I think it's such a fantastic area that it's one network that no one really fights with who has what and who really owns what, which we've seen in various geos, and dispute over land, dispute over claims of ownership on these these domains. This system absolutely have no disputes. There may be camps and tribal wars on who's superior, which is okay, but there's absolutely no dispute between those, which I think is such a fantastic phenomenon. So I would love to envision a world 10 years from now build upon these protocols. I'll stop at that and love to get your thoughts, Gaur.
That's so much. There's so much to unpack. So firstly, that's quite a euphoric view. A utopian view, and that creates a euphoric outcome. And that is that if you're not focused on money, then what can you do? And look, as a kid, I used to always enjoy watching Star Trek, and what I found intriguing about the philosophy of Star Trek, if you look at it, it was actually a true socialist environment. Heaven forbid, throw your arms up at the world, socialist, how terrible. No, forget all the propaganda. It was actually an extraordinary environment because Star Trek had unlimited energy, and with unlimited energy, they could do anything they wanted. And so therefore, money became irrelevant. And so what was their pursuit then? Well, their pursuit was exploration, learning, and the growth of their society, or the Federation, as it was called. And Gene Roddenberry was no mug when he put this together. And in some ways, here we are looking at these extraordinary ecosystems and seeing them come together. If you've got an ecosystem which is a true decentralized autonomous organization where the law is written into the code, you can't argue. There's no arguing the law, it's the code. That's the way it is, the DAO works, and therefore you can actually go, well, that's the way it works. And in the case of Bitcoin, it works fairly slowly, but it's very, very solid. And so with that in mind, everyone goes, well, that's how it works. It works slowly, but it's extremely solid, accounting process. And so that being the case, what are we going to do? Well, we get ahead and we build the environment around us. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of these systems. When you see a system established like Ethereum, you all of a sudden go, okay, so Ethereum is operating, pretty close to a DAO. It does have an overviewing area where they're about to make some changes in it to try and make it more efficient. But once the code's in place, the idea is that you can leave it operate. Where your focus then becomes is how do you build within it? And I'd like to sort of think that this is a little bit like sitting on a ship outside Singapore. And if you've ever been to Singapore, and you've been there many times, when you look at Singapore, it's an extraordinary country to look at from the ocean, whereas you're flying from an airplane, because it's the only country in the world that's 100% urbanized. And so it has every commercial activity you can possibly imagine in it. To a degree, it's ring-fenced by the ocean. And so what's getting created it has been created in Singapore, which is exchanges and businesses and real estate and people living and societies operating and culture appearing, can appear in a Terra Luna network,
Sure.
And it's up to the creators of the Terra Luna network to see that personality of that network appears. And we may see it operating kind of like a sovereign state. Actually, Nitin, I like Terra Luna more than Polkadot. That's where I like to hang out the most. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden that becomes your country. But what comes of that is these incredible building blocks that you can build so much upon. And you and I and the listening audience, everybody, we are at the very, very beginning of this. What's getting built within these layer ones is extraordinary. And that's where I think we're up to at the moment. You know, where do you think it's going to go, Nitin?
No, I think the space analogy, Deryck, it is so fascinating because I think Terra Luna, your fascination with Star Wars, I see a theme here that we are building something that can transcend to other galaxies, and it could be a better system which is truly out of the world, so to speak. But two things in that, right? Just in the same thematic element, JPMC had done a project a while back in creating sort of a interplanetary sort of a settlement system. So of course we have enough challenges on our existing planet of settling on time, but they had looked into this and saying, if Bitcoin takes 15 minutes to settle a transaction, how much it will take between, let's say, something you could run is on one of the satellites in LEOs, which is low Earth or orbitals, the satellites that are there for other communication networks. Can we run a node there and use that as a transaction mechanism? In spite of that, me and my team spend like a few weeks in figuring out what that technical design would look like for us to connect these nodes to a node that may be residing in, let's say, in future in talking about Terra Luna, let's say on Moon, or in future in Mars, as Elon Musk has ambitions to colonize Mars or to establish a terraforming community in Mars, on Mars. But the point of some of these things are exactly that these are digital currencies that if we can confine this to the fact that they are a product of math and protocol, and it's recognized by 8 billion people, can that not then transcend that your earnings from, and this is maybe too futuristic, but I would say not, because we're heading in the direction we've been talking about space and going out of the world. And if we can address the fact that these coins and tokens could be recognized as communities move from our planet to other planets, it's conceivable that the fact that your analogy of Star Wars, they didn't care about money and banking because they didn't have to. There's an assumption, there's a network in the system that they can move the credits, as the term that have been used in many of the space movies. They use the term credits, that they have so many credits they've earned as a part, and that they can be transferred and moved. They didn't have to worry, at least in any of the shows, have to worry about going to a bank in space and figuring out how do I deposit the money and withdraw money and having an ATM. That concept didn't exist in any of the space stories that I have seen, because it's an assumption there's going to be a digital community and digital tribe that will manage the notion of credits and recognition of these digital currencies of sorts. But tying that back to layer one, and this is where things become interesting, that layer one projects, whether it's early days of Ethereum, Solana, and some of the other, or Bitcoin, you have a provider, which is a bunch of people come together, which started out, which, by the way, 13 years, it's 13 years week anniversary of Bitcoin white paper being released, and 13 years later, 12,800 plus tradable coins, 48,000 total coins somewhere out there, 12,000 being meaningful and popping on a daily basis. The economy today is 2.74 trillion, as you mentioned. So 13 years, not a bad run rate for how this is coming. But the layer one protocol provides a protocol support, provides rules of engagement in form of a protocol, which is mining and minting and the ability for you to participate in a community, which is bringing some resources if you want to make money, or using the community and paying a fee, whatever your poison is, bringing you a sense of community, which is the digital tribe ecosystem, creating an economic system incentive structure with technical resiliency leading to an ecosystem, innovation, attracting more innovation. They are in their own form a digital nation state. And as each layer one and the founders of layer one, whether it's an individual or a team of individuals, are trying to solve, which is where things become interesting with layer two, which is either scalability and performance and other areas. That innovative spirit, just like nation state fought with each other in finding the best places to open businesses, is something which I find as prominent MO as modus operandi for them to attract more talent, I don't think many of them are really competing for the value of Bitcoin. It's the investment community that's focusing on Bitcoin and the valuation of Bitcoin. But the valuation is increasing because the demand of these tokens and coins are increasing because they are growing businesses, they're growing communities, they're growing sort of the developer ecosystem that's developing projects to connect the world and truly create global, economic system. I think that's rather profound, and I think we should sort of focus on that as opposed to purely focusing on, hey, the value of Bitcoin is 60K, it's all-time high. The question we should be asking, why is it all-time high? And what's driving that valuation mechanism, which is what we do as we evaluate assets, Deryck, as you know, in our investment sort of thesis as we evolve. But I'll stop at that.
Exactly. That's something we can't help but bring to this. We are at the end of the day an outcome of our environment and our culture. And so when we look at this space, just like my prelude, I tried to provide a context. Now, I provided a context with my understanding of context and many listening audiences' understanding of context. That context could be irrelevant in 20 years' time or 30 years' time. That the merge between traditional finance, physical companies, the FANG networks, I mean, what are they going to look like really in another 5 or 7 years' time? With decentralized autonomous organizations being able to provide so much in the metaverse environment, so much in the social media environment, so there's no longer a centralized return. They're at risk of these other communities that we're talking about now, these ring-fenced communities of layer one protocols that are getting developed. These big centralized communities of Facebook and Amazon, they're at risk of this. So they must know that, and they're rapidly morphing, hence the reason Facebook has chosen to change its name and talk more about Metaverse, because it's trying to become, I think, engaged in this space. It's my view of it. But what's important here is that we're still acting like humans, and what we're doing is we're creating these communities again, and these communities are extraordinary, and they're the foundation stones that entire cities, but they're digital cities and digital offerings, are getting built from. And the prime difference between the cities that we're used to now is that these cities are global and nowhere and everywhere at any time and all time. And that starts changing the way we look at how human beings interact in these cities. They get down to their fundamental tribal. I like Terra Luna. I want to work in this environment. But at the same time, they are totally global and without a time limitation. And I think that's a very powerful thing that we're seeing created. I can't help but say anymore, we're at the absolute genesis of this space. What we're talking about here is history in the making. And it's a very exciting space to be in, frankly. It really is.
Yeah, and I'll make two analogies of this, right? Since you talked about this is where we look into the transformation of the next phase of this industry. So if you look at, again, I refer to two of my favorite authors, Jared Diamond, who talked about Guns, Germs, and Steel evolution of who we are as humans. And he talked about the fact that, we as humans have the need to explore. And so, and it is in the same context, actually, with Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, which is the early stage of humans who developed watercraft, were able to go to different islands and pursue their dream to find their best place for their lives. And stemming from that early days of human evolution, agriculture, hunting, and the whole 9 yards, I think where Yuval Noah Harari coined a term called imagined order. It's an innate need of humans to belong to a community. It's innate need for us to be a part of hierarchy and part of some community, some order that we recognize, because it's important for all of us to have some thought process, and which is belief system, which may be US dollar, which may be Ethereum, Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. So as we are looking into this space, and as we are analysis of humans and our need to be able to be part of this digital community to talk about, I oftentimes wonder, well, we have always looked at the way we have organized ourselves, whether they were community tribes, eventually becoming a part of kingdom, and kingdoms fought with each other to form a bigger kingdom or split into smaller kingdoms, whether it's consolidation or deconsolidation, which is a common thing that we keep going through back and forth in human history. Yes. Can that be applied to the crypto space? Is this the next generation of that experiment to say, hey, we've tried all these over X thousand years. Let's try another experiment, because now we have the technology and we are building upon the tech to find another set of community and see if we can organize ourselves a bit more better to solve the issues of the previous generations and how they have organized themselves and always left something undone. And I feel that, but I also look into saying that this digital network becomes so big and so dependent that we may not have another opportunity to reorganize ourselves, because the digital networks will eventually enslave our thinking and our innovation, only because now our entire economy and this whole notion of metaverse is so dependent on this virtual engagement that it becomes difficult to sort of backtrack, which we could easily do in physical world. And I'll leave you with that as a thought process to discuss, I think.
Well, I hope for the listening audience that we've and our continued podcasts we do are providing context. So today we've provided context where we sit in the traditional industry and the size of the magnitude of it at $2.74 trillion. But we've also provided it with some context in regards to how these metaverses, how these layer one protocols are working. They're not just soulless environments. They're actually human beings and communities working together with their own personalities and outcomes. Some of you people that are listening may be investors. Well, if you're investors, then you'd be looking at these communities and looking at them in a different manner. Some of you guys that are listening might be programmers. Well, if you're programmers, you might be deciding which program language you want to use and which community you want to actually get involved with. But whatever you're doing, listening to this particular view of it, what we're experiencing now is very human. What's getting developed is very human. And although it's extremely complex in regards to some of its interoperability aspects and its programming, at the end of the day, it's getting built by humans and for humans. And accordingly, we sculpt this creation with that in mind. So I think with that, I think we might end our gathering this evening for about our 30 minutes of philosophizing about the space. Gosh, I kind of feel like I want to keep going, but that is the time that we've got. And I just want to hand it finally across to you. Next week, what do you think we might talk about, Nitin?
I think we should continue our sprint towards addressing another very fast-growing global economic player in this space, India. We talked about Brazil last week. We learned a lot of on-ground reality. We had amazing feedback. And we should shift our focus to India, one of the fastest-growing crypto economic ecosystems, both in terms of developer community, but also in terms of the common masses and people who are subscribing to wallets to get into the space, which is increasing demand. And we should probably get an expert from on the ground and have that discussion, because I think that's so we should again focus on these emerging economies which gives us perspective, this truly global system that we're building, I think. Yeah,
great idea. You wouldn't know anyone in India, would you, Nid?
I'll have to look. Yes, of course. I'm an Indian. I'll know, if not the 1.4 billion people, I'll know at least a few 100,000. So I'll reach out to my network and see if I can get someone.
That is great. All right. Well, that's fantastic. I look forward to next week. And in this case, in a journey, in a country, and see how that country interacts, and we'll see how that might interface with all these communities that we're talking about today. This is a human environment after all. Thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this, please, of course, do the bit and subscribe and listen to us on podcasts along the way. And we look forward to seeing you or being able to chat to you next week. Don't forget, by the way, you can always communicate with us via LinkedIn. My name is Deryck Graham, Deryck Graham, and Nitin Gaur, of course.
All right, guys, chat next week for another exciting week ahead.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
Ciao,
See
ciao.
you.
Bye.